Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Alistair Overeem to defeat Bigfoot Silva. And I'm here to talk about Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell, the main event of the prelims, which is only a 3-round fight. And that is good for Bryce Mitchell because he has taken this fight on like a week's notice, 10 days notice or something. Just really cool for Bryce Mitchell because this is a matchup that when he first got to the UFC, I would have considered this the worst matchup in the division for him, Josh Emmett. But now they've been in the UFC in the same division for quite a few years together, and I have to say that has gone away. I think Bryce Mitchell should win this fight, if I can spoil my prediction at the top here. Bryce is 29 years old, 16-1 as a pro, and he's got 4 inches of height and the same reach as 38-year-old Emmett, who is 18-4. Josh, like I said, would have been a bad matchup for Bryce Mitchell, in my opinion, just by being that anti-wrestler. Josh Emmett using his wrestling to keep the fight standing and battering Bryce standing up, which, I guess could still happen. Josh Emmett still probably has some of the hardest power in the division, even though my opinion of his power has gone down a little bit. And my opinion of his wrestling has certainly gone down throughout the years. He's just went from being a guy that could use his wrestling defensively or even offensively to a guy who's going to see when the wrestling comes to him. He's just looking to strike. And here I think Bryce Mitchell is going to be leading the dance. I think he's going to be able to crowd Josh Emmett and hit some well-timed takedowns. Bryce Mitchell is not an athlete by any means, not an explosive guy, but he's got some really technical takedowns. I mean, his grappling overall is his best asset, but the wrestling to get it there, my opinion of his wrestling has gone way up since he's done really well in the UFC against some incredible competition. And Bryce, if he does get on top of you, he's going to control you. He's going to advance. If you're weak enough grappling-wise, he'll submit you, but at the very least, the round is over. So you don't want to concede takedowns to Bryce Mitchell. Josh Emmett, like I said, I would have thought he was a bad matchup early on, but now he's fallen off a little bit. He's coming off 2 rough losses. Yair Rodriguez choked him out with a triangle in round 2. That was the interim title fight. Very high-profile fight. But still, Emmett didn't look very encouraging in that fight. And against Ilia Topuria, while he looked incredibly encouraging in some moments in that fight, it was still largely a big-time ass-kicking. And he didn't get knocked out, didn't get finished, but he was beaten up, and at 38 years old, I have to imagine that slowed him down in one way or another. And he's a guy who has been slowing down for some time, Josh Emmett, like I said. I think a little less of his power and his wrestling these days. He's still picked up some good wins in recent years. 5-round decision over Calvin Kattar. Very close fight. Another close fight with Dan Ige. That was a 3-rounder. Wasn't too long ago he had that classic with Shane Burgos. But as far as his knockout power, I think the last one comes to Mirsad Bektic, who he knocked out with a jab pretty much. And then before that, that big overhand haymaker against Michael Johnson in round 3, which was enough to get him a comeback victory there. So, I still imagine he's got the power, but I don't think Bryce Mitchell has a chin issue. Bryce Mitchell seems like a very healthy fighter. His one loss was to Ilia Topuria, and he was beaten up in that fight gradually, but then he was eventually choked out. Bryce Mitchell, he's got one professional loss. It's via submission, deep in round 2 to Topuria, or maybe not so deep. One exhibition loss to Brad Catone on The Ultimate Fighter. That was a rear naked choke deep into the fight, round 3. And then he's got an armbar or something early on as an amateur. That's the other time he's been finished. Not that I'm saying, whatever, he's weak submission-wise. I was just praising him. I think a lot of his submission game. But I'm saying that just could be his trait, where if he loses, that's how he loses. And if that is how he loses, that's not really on the table against Josh Emmett. I'm sure Emmett's got a monster guillotine choke like all the alpha male guys, but I don't think that's on the table here in this fight. I think Bryce Mitchell on the outside is a tricky striker. Seen him knock down Edson Barbosa, but he's a guy that knows it's a means to an end. And the fact that he knows that and fights like that is what makes him such a good fighter. He's she's striking for the perfect takedown. And from there, it's his fight. I think Bryce Mitchell ends up getting Josh Emmett down at the midway point of round 1, or maybe even early in round 1. But once he gets him down, I think that's it. He may not put him away in that round, but I think he's going to suck enough of the life out of him where the takedowns only come more easily. It's going to look like Miesha Tate versus Julia Avila. And I do think Bryce Mitchell wins this fight by decision or submission. I guess I'd go with decision on paper. But again, Bryce Mitchell, if he wins a decision, he's got multiple 10-8 rounds or, a lot of sustained dominance. So maybe a late submission is worth a prop bet for Bryce Mitchell. But that's the pick. Bryce Mitchell, I like his money line at minus 225. I think he wins a decision or a submission deeper into the fight. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.